name is Edwin. I am a solutions architect at Puppet, and today I'm going to talk about how you can use process mapping to target your automation efforts. So let's get started. This is the agenda for today. We're going to talk about toil as a concept. We're not going to go deep in this topic because it's not part of the whole session. The session is more about the process mapping that we have been doing and how you can apply this in your organization. We're going to give you a quick intro. I'm going to talk about the technique, and then I'm going to give you all the tips and tricks that you can use in your own workshop. At the end, we are going to wrap everything with the key takeaways, and that will be it for today. So let's move to the next slide. Toil. What is toil? Chances are that most of you watching this video, you are already familiar with toil. Maybe you have experienced toil, like working with toil in your day-to-day business activities. But for those of you that are not familiar with the topic, we can define toil as that work that is very repetitive, but it's automatable. And it's that type of work that lacks of enduring value and that scales linearly as your service grows. So what is this like what's the meaning of this? So toil can be interpreted as that work that you do that is not oriented towards the strategy per se of your IT department or your infrastructure team, but it's more about like all those tasks that you have to manually be there or be present in order to make it work. So I have this meme here, toil. Toil is everywhere. What are some of the examples of toil? So we can mention like handling monitor alerts, say that sometimes you have to jump into urgent on-call responses because one of the services is down, or there's an emergency patching situation and then you just have to like go and do it. We can say that there is toil present in some aspects of change management and firewall requests. This is very, very common in enterprises. However, I'm just going to mark this with an asterisk because in some situations, you still want to have like this human intervention in place just to make sure that you are not doing something that is going to put you on risk. But you can still automate some aspects of the whole change management process and firewall requests. We can also mention that toil is present when you have to copy and paste commands from a playbook, or you have to fill forms, I don't know, like a spreadsheet to get an approval of something. That's basically toil. You can find more information in the link that you can see in the slide there. That's the toil definition from the Google SRE team. Go ahead and take a look there. So process mapping, what is this thing? I'm going to give you a quick intro, the benefits and the flow that we use. So you can do this with your team. So in the Puppet Solutions Architects team, we have been working with a lot of customers, basically enterprise customers. And we have been using this very lightweight version of event storming, which is a workshop that came from the DDD world, domain-driven design. We're going to talk more about that in the next slide. And it has proven to be very effective as detecting toil and as like talking about like why this process is there and having some suggestions for improving that. So I think that this has been very, very effective in our case. So where is this process mapping coming from? As I mentioned before, I mentioned domain-driven design. This is coming inspired by DDD. Basically, if you're not familiar with it, domain-driven design fosters the learning of the domain where the project and the business is happening. So, for example, like if you're new to a new company, let's say like you're hired in a new fintech, you have no idea about like the finance and like legal restrictions that are present in that industry. Go ahead and learn all the vocabulary, all the legal requirements that are there, all the constraints, because the more that you know, the more chances that you will have to create solutions that address the problems in the right way. As I mentioned before, in point number 2 here in the slide, we adapt our process mapping from event storming. Event storming is a workshop that was created by Alberto Brandolini. He's a consultant from Italy, and he created event storming to apply DDD in a workshop format. We got it's inspired by that as well, and we have been using our process in the field with our customers, and so far so good. So why you should care about learning the domain and learning the vocabulary, and like spending time with your team? Well, basically, we want to reduce the amount of assumptions that you do in your day-to-day basis, and this meme right here is kind of funny, but at the same time, it kind of represents the situation. Sometimes you have the IT director. This director comes with a strategy for the next 2 years. He communicates this to the infrastructure management side, maybe, I don't know, 5 or teams. And then it's the job of the infrastructure manager to communicate this to the sysadmin, which is going to apply like the concept at the end. He's going to implement the changes. And as you can see, it's like a crazy fun line. Let's say the results, what it's implemented, is kind of looks different from what the director had in mind. And the kind of sad thing is, like, they all think that they're doing the right thing, but they just got the concept in a different way. So in order to make sure that the implementation is brilliant as it was thought or designed, we should align the penthouse, let's say, to the engineering room, so everyone is like in the same using the same concept. So here are the 3 benefits that you can have from using this process. We focus on the process, not in the tech. This means that technical people, yeah, I'm one of those. We tend to just go down the rabbit hole talking about why Kubernetes is a good idea in this situation, but not in the other one. So we tend to talk a lot about the solutions and the technology instead of the process itself. So with this technique, you're going to focus on the process, ignore the technology terms for now. And this is great because everyone involved can participate and collaborate instead of only the techie persons. Number 2, it helps to spread common project knowledge across the participants. And this is great, as I mentioned before, because you need to align everyone, and you need to know, and you need to make sure that everyone knows what is exactly required. And number 3, you will end up with a model, which is a representation of the situation and the process that you have. And this is useful because you can have and bring this model to senior leadership and talk about like what you're doing without any technical term. So the flow, we have, let's say, like 3 rules here. Number 1 is like there's a timeline, and we have this timeline from left to right. And I will show you an example of like what I mean by a timeline. Number 2, we start by mapping the events. And again, in the next slide, I'm going to introduce you to what an event is. And number 3, we discuss each event, and we try to create conversations around what is happening, why this event came here, so we can document all the actions that we take and who is the owner or responsible for this step in the process. So what's an event? We can define an event as a fact, something that is happening in the process right now. And usually we map those events in past sentence. So for example, we have here in the screen, a pull request is approved. So a pull request, someone approved that request, and that's an event. So something should happen, or sometimes it is required, but after one event happens, usually you have actions. So we try to map the actions as well. Some examples of events can be a pull request was approved, as we have here, or the feature was deployed, or the change request was raised, or the machine size up request was raised. So this is something that is happening in your process, and we document that in past sentence. What else we have here? We have a sticky note that is orange, and that represents who is the owner of this step. So in this case, say that it is the OS team. I mentioned actions, and usually when an event happens, you have follow-up actions based on that event. So the event triggers actions. So in this case, we have a bluish one that represents that the action is an automated action. Here we have automatically deployed to staging. So once the pull request is approved, we will trigger an action that automatically will deploy to staging. And this is owned by the OS team. Finally, we have two more sticky notes. We have the red one, and this represents a question. If for whatever reason the team present in the session is like lacking of answers, let's say, for one step of the process, maybe that's an indicator that we need to go out of the room and bring a domain expert or like the business leader or someone that can help us to answer this question. So instead of forgetting that, we just map it, we just drop the red sticky note, and that's a follow-up action that we have to do after the workshop. The green sticky note, that means basically just context or more information about this particular step. Here you can see that I just documented that version control system is GitLab. So sometimes that's important. The more context that we have, the better. And that's basically it. Let's talk about the timeline. Remember that I mentioned a timeline a couple of slides ago. So this is the rule that we try to mimic the process as it happens. So the time matters when you're sorting all the events, and it should follow from left to right. Part of the process is like the first 5 minutes, you just do a brainstorming. Just ask the team to just like map all the events that they have in mind. And once the first 5 minutes happen, please ask them to sort them based on time. So you can start collecting this like timeline, let's say. Once the event is there, then the process of, remember, the process of who's the owner, which type of actions we do after this event is present. Do we have more context to share there? Do we have questions? That process kicks, and we continue mapping the whole timeline. So this is one example. You can see all the different colors there, what the color represents, event owner, manual action information. And yeah, so here are the tips of how you can use process mapping in your organization. So let me just, yeah, here are the tips. As a facilitator, you should prepare the stage. This means that you should, like, with time, you should invite everyone in the project. And usually, if your core team works cross-functionally, invite all the people involved in those steps as well, because sometimes the sources of truth are not in your team, but are in the other teams that you collaborate. The second one is maintain your role as the facilitator. And this means that you should be aware that the conversation is moving towards technical aspects. So be ready to step in and to start moving the conversation away from the technical aspects to something more meaningful. So for example, one tip could be like, so we have this event, like what's the trigger? Who's the owner? Is this still relevant? Should we consider this event as part of the new process? In case of doubt, just drop a question sticky note and then just figure out who's the owner or who can answer that later. Invite the right people. The more people with domain expertise in the project or the business, the better. Identify the domain events first, as I mentioned before, and try to connect events to actions. I think that's like the main objective of the whole session. So I'm going to switch to this map, and as you can see, this is a real map from a customer that it's fully anonymized. You can see how many automated actions you have here. We just have 2, and we don't have the time to just like go one by one, but it is like fairly visual to say that we have just a few automated actions. Here, this is one of the proposals that we created with my team. You can see that there are like more action happening, let's say, and this is just based on the first map that we did with the team. This sparked collaboration among team members. This helps you to spread information, to speak the same language, so everyone is aware of why something is there. You will end up with a map, which is an abstraction of the reality, and that's okay. Not even Google Maps is 100% accurate. And finally, this mapping will help you to highlight important areas in the process, such as approvals, responsibilities, bottlenecks, and this, as you can see, is very useful for toil analysis. If you want to know more about DDD, domain-driven design, I would recommend the book in the middle and event storming as well from Alberto Brandolini. And that's it. Thank you.